Podcast. I am your host, Phillip Lanos, and today we have with us Dennis Cunningham, President and Chief Executive Officer of Perfect Vodka and Airtab, which he founded. Airtab is a leading social network app that connects people to trending dining and entertainment experiences, and he launched a $25 million cocktail giveaway in December 2020. So now that sounds insane. Dennis, tell us about this specifically, this giveaway, and then we'll get into all the other stuff.
Oh, you got it, man. Yeah. So we figured what would really make a bang is to create the largest holiday contest ever, right? And so the goal was to really do a lot to bring people back into the restaurants and bars and really to incentivize people. There's been a lot of hurt financially, right?
Yeah.
So if we could, give people a chance to win, 50 cocktails, which is $500 value. And so we said, what if we did this with 50,000 people and we do it 50 major markets? And that's where the 25 million comes in. So they'll be able to go and win the drinks. They can actually gift them to their friends and family for holidays, which is cool. So if you've got a girlfriend, a friend, a business partner, you could send out two cocktails and they could redeem them in the restaurants and bars near them. And that brings you in the restaurant. And the drinks are actually, Philip, they're spread apart by 45 minutes. We do that on purpose. They're two free drinks at each, so each visit's two drinks.
Right.
So if you win the 50 drinks, they're actually 25 pairs. And we did that so when you go to the restaurant, you stay there for 45 minutes before you get your second drink. Because we don't really want to have people, pounding down drinks right away and then go back out and drive again, right?
Yeah.
And also we want to keep you in the restaurant.
I was gonna say.
Yeah, it keeps it sticky, right? They're not leaving. No one's ever left a free drink behind ever. You know?
I'm not leaving till my second drink is
That's
gone.
right. And when they're there, they'll get an appetizer. Oh, we might as well have dinner. Well, let's get a bottle of wine with dinner. Let's stay with friends. So a 45-minute visit turns into 3 hours, and time goes by fast when you're having fun. And so it gave us a chance to really, utilize our platform and really do a benefit for COVID. We felt, what can we do to give back a little bit?
See, that's genius. Now, I want to explore why it is you are that type of person to create a business that's actually impacting socially. Like, how did this all begin? Do you have entrepreneurs in your family background? Were you guys always doing like things that always sought to give back to your community, or were you part of a sports team? I mean, where does this come from, Dennis?
So interesting. So my father was actually a Coast Guard captain. So
Ah,
he was raised in a very conservative household as far as he had his career and his we traveled all over the country. And the last where the boat left off for us is that when he retired, we were in California, so Silicon Valley, and I watched these guys do business. I'm like, wow, it's like effortless. They come up with an idea and they do something, and they kill it. And I was intrigued by the whole mindset of being an entrepreneur. And that's at 17 is when I became an entrepreneur, and I started building businesses, became a serial entrepreneur. I've really only had one job my whole life, so I don't know anything different. So for 30, 35 plus years is all I've done. So once you have the bug for that, it's kind of hard to do anything else.
yeah. Well, you must be pretty good at it for doing it for over 35 years. I imagine it wasn't easy though. What was one of the first, if you don't mind sharing just a little bit, like your first attempt ever at business? What was that like?
Oh, this is actually a funny story. So there's the largest PPO in the country, or HMO, I should say, is Kaiser Permanente. And the only job I really ever had was a high-end audio video store in San Jose. And I loved, I'm an audiophile, so I love music and everything that comes with back then it was really unique because it was needles instead of CDs, right? Turntables, and this is
That's
radically
right.
different. And so I feel very blessed to have been around with all the advent of all the latest technology, right? But one of my customers at the time was John Pori, and John Pori had invented the telephonic EEG, and
Wow.
he was a big customer of mine. Did very well for himself, but I just really was attracted to everything about him. So he said, "What are you wasting your time here for? Selling stereo equipment?" Of course, I'm 17 years old, right?
Yeah.
And he said, "Why don't you come do a deal with me, and I could, you could help sell these new products I'm creating." So he came up with an idea, and I said, "Well, I don't know how to start a business." And he goes, "Well, you have to, because I'm not going to employ you." So he goes, "Yeah." So I had to create a company, and this is before you can't just log online. It's radically different. Um, So you can't just, form a corporation in 10 seconds, right?
Legal
Uh,
Zoom or something.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. There was no legal Zoom back then, brother. No way. Are you kidding? So I created this business. So I thought I did it all wrong, of course, and it was very interesting. But we had a couple of big hits, and that gave me probably a really good flavor for the desire to continue. I got
Man.
into after that from into the concert promotion space, which is really interesting.
Ah.
You know how life is. Like you've seen the movie Slumdog Millionaire.
Yeah.
So all those experiences you go through. So that's
Yeah.
kind of what happened. Is like all of a sudden I meet this guy and I got on this path, and then all of a sudden years later you look back and go, oh, that's why that happened, and that's why this happened, and that's why that happened.
It
And
reminds me of The Alchemist and Paulo Coelho. Yeah.
yeah,
It's
so all those weird experiences turned into what we kind of evolved into today. So
wow.
I've always liked the opportunity to see what the disruption is, and it could be an everyday business. It's a perspective of the everyday business. You sometimes you look at things every day, but someone's fresh perspective looks at it and says, well, why don't you do that this way? Like what? you know that's been my experience in what we're doing. It's been really interesting.
So then how does Perfect Vodka fit into this, right? So you're doing the music business thing or the concerts and the audio technology, and then you're moving forward. And then how does Perfect Vodka come into the picture?
So interesting thing. I was visiting my folks in Sarasota, Florida, where they had retired, and we lived in Florida for a few years. Part of the Coast Guard thing is Florida, right? And but at that point, I was living in San Francisco area, and went to visit them, and fell in love with an area called Jupiter, Florida, and decided to sooner retire here at a younger age. I was very fortunate, and everyone wanted to pick your brain if you're the fresh guy from California, because you booga booga California. What's that? It's like a whole other country to people that are Florida, right? And so I just enjoyed business. And of course, when you cut your teeth in business with guys in Silicon Valley, I mean, how do you get better than that, right?
Yeah.
So the experiences were very cool. So ended up getting a guy that wanted to consult with me about his or talk with me about his vodka brand. He had created a vodka out of France, super high end, and I'm hearing him tell me about his plight, what he went through. And all I kept hearing was that my perspective was fresh. Like I kept hearing the solution, the technology solution in this deal. So his big dilemma was he things he couldn't do with liquor. They're called tight house laws, things that you can't do. And I said, well, you can't give away free drinks. You can't do all these things. No, I said, well, why? He goes, well, it goes back to the post-prohibition days, which you can't do. I said, okay, well, why? Like I kept thinking, why can't that be done? So I looked into it and ended up saying, you know what? I'm going to learn about this liquor space. I like this guy's vodka so much. It literally was very smooth. It tastes like water. I mean, it was insane. So I bought the company, and then I decided to start building a technology platform that could do all the things that you couldn't do and make it so you could do them.
Mm.
So instead of the girl with the tray walking around with samples of liquor, what if we did that in an app? And and what if I could bring foot traffic to a restaurant and incentivize them to get some sort of value proposition? Like, what do I get out of this if I bring someone into that restaurant to taste all these samples of whiskey, right? Who would pay me for that? That's behavioral data that is amazing. I could say, well, no, you think it's 46-year-old men that like your whiskey, but in this area of the country, it's 27-year-old women that like this whiskey, right? And they happen to be, from these zip codes and not that zip code. So all of a sudden, it just kind of opened up this plethora of opportunity with our new technology.
Man, I can really,
Yeah.
really see the Silicon Valley coming through you, man.
Thanks, man. Thank you.
No way. Wow. See, this is what I love about this is being able to ask a story to see why people make the decisions they make. And I can see now you love this, man. Like to you, this
Yeah.
is a day in the life. This is what you're doing. And with Airtab and the things that you're doing now, right? With Perfect Vodka and Airtab, like you're giving away all these drinks to help businesses and restaurants that are failing, as we started talking about, because the pandemic has hit everyone hard, but in particular the food industry and
Oh
beverage
yeah.
industry is super hard.
It's been brutal, man. I mean, the two industries that have been really clobbered that are kind of two in one is the restaurant hospitality space, of course, but also, the music space, independent artists. So
You're
when I
so
created
right. No
Airtab,
one's talking about that.
yeah, and you know what? In the ecosystem, I was already building an interface with Airtab called Airtab Music. So I know that once you're in the restaurant, we wanted to make this easy for an independent artist. a lot of times they're younger, they're millennials that don't necessarily have the people skills because they've had computers, they've had, technology that gave them a lot of that upside to do, that not to avoid the inefficient engagement where I have to go meet you for a meeting, right? I can just do it like we're doing right now, right? So I said, gosh, if I can make that easier. So before COVID even hit, we were sponsoring one of the largest music festivals in South Florida. And we were doing it because we wanted to give the independent artists a chance to have a contest and open to the big stage with some of the biggest performers of all time.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And I said, well, if I could tie that into get a couple drinks and come see this artist perform at the independent artist, and the technology play on this really, to be honest, was what we created called Here Now Live, which would let you see the most important content for a restaurant is who's there.
Yeah.
Right. And you could open up any app anywhere that has to do with restaurants. You can see reviews from some guy. Kenny says the spaghetti is amazing there, right? Or Kelly really hates the atmosphere, whatever those reviews are.
Yeah.
But you don't know Kelly or Kenny. And actually they're not populated there now. And you don't really know if they actually went there. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And so you're doing is you're really looking at the food reviews, you're looking at the pictures, but you would like to know what kind of people go there. What kind of music events are there? Who's going to go to that music event? What's trending? What am I about to miss out on if I don't find it? And where's the ecosystem for all that? So I realized it was a pretty big thing, but if you really drill down on what the efficient part is, that is, how do I, as a local musician, like we were just talking about music, think of it like an Uber driver, right? If you're driving for Uber and you decide to go visit your Aunt Millie in San Francisco and you're from Ohio, right? You could drive for Uber in San Francisco while you're there, because you work for Uber. It's independent. You just get on the rotation, right?
Yeah.
So imagine if you're an independent artist, you could put your tile out there and say, look at me, look at my videos, look at how amazing I am. You guys, I'll be in San Francisco on this week in July. Would you like to book me? And they could see, well, this guy's cool. He's not from here. Remember, there's like California to Florida. Where's this guy from? It's all new, right? And it takes the independent artist a chance to break out of the local mold that they're in. Get out of the one horse town if they want to. They can go on a tour, for example. And when you have liquor brands that say, I'd like to do a micro sponsorship of a local country star in that market. So, hey, go to this event tonight, see Johnny, country star of Louisville, Kentucky, right? Yeah. But if you go see him tonight, you get a couple of Jack Daniels whiskeys when he show up, compliments of Airtab. So now we're talking. Now we got a party, right? So you get drinks, you get music, and you can see where people are, and you get to see who's going there, who's decided to go. It's like a Facebook component, but yet it's outside of that world of grandma seeing my photographs. So what are you doing at that bar? It gives you your own ecosystem, right? So that's essentially what Airtab created.
I love the way you look at business, though. I mean, it seems like you really are user oriented, participant oriented in the development of your actual product. Like you're really people first, person first. And I can see why you're able to do what it is you're doing now. And Perfect Vodka now. You guys are doing this giveaway, and you have this music component that you're going to add, which totally makes a lot of sense given your background and where you came from. And that's super cool for you to be giving back like that. Where are you taking this next though with Perfect Vodka? Let's say Q1 2021. What are you guys working on?
So the goal with Perfect Vodka was ultimately, if you take on sponsored brands in our platform, you get a chance to stand out in the app. So remember the old days when you would run ads. Even now, if you go to sell a car on a trader platform, right?
Yeah.
If you pay a premium, they'll put you at the top of the heap, right? Mm-hmm. So you're selling your Porsche, and all of a sudden you're the first Porsche, even though you're 40 miles away from the guy. You're like, why is this Porsche showing when I'm so close to the other guy right below him, right? That's because he paid, right? So ultimately, we wanted to be able to say, hey, if you have sponsors, you're going to be a preferred platform. So it's event vendor, supplier. So all of a sudden, that restaurant stands out. So if you take on our sponsors, that restaurant now can be here and at the top. And now, if you when you go to redeem the drinks in the platform, you can have a choice of a whiskey, a vodka, tequila, gin. And those are sponsors, and the restaurant essentially can say, well, if I make decisions to take on these liquor brands that are sponsors that Airtab wants to get this data from, right? I can go back and tell this tequila company or this vodka company, this gin company, hey, here's where you're trending and what age bracket. So now they know not to waste dollars, like we said earlier, right?
Mm-hmm.
So Perfect Vodka eventually will be one of those suppliers that is sponsored in the platform. So I can help encourage the sale of my product down the road. But I
Ah,
want everyone else to enjoy it first. I want, we're in 31 countries. The vodka is doing very well. We expect to be one of the top in the boutique space. We're very high end. You're not going to find us everywhere, but when you find it, it's a spectacular product. Um, but later on, we want to have cool tastings in the platform where Perfect Vodka will play a critical role. You get a mixology tastings where you can actually
yeah.
sample really cool drinks. Yeah, I don't know. My wife, when we go to a restaurant, there, the first thing she says to the bartender, "Let me see your drink menu. Let me see the drink menu. Is this sweet? Is this bitter?" The poor guy's got to describe every single restaurant. He's got to describe what. No, it's not that sweet. It's kind of this versus, hey, guess what? In a half hour, we're doing a mixology tasting, and you can tell us which one you like. And that's all
Ah,
right. That's all populating the people in the app. So when you redeem that, you populate. So then everyone who's not at the restaurant gets to see, oh, so Dennis and his wife and these 10 other people are at that restaurant right now. They're trending with real live human beings. The critical content of a restaurant is who goes there and who's there now.
yeah.
Ultimately, people tell me this will be a cool dating interface right down the road.
Yeah,
But
I can see that. I
but
knowing you, you're gonna make it work somehow, man. That's just I could just already see it. I'm not surprised if it works out.
thanks,
Wow,
man.
talking to you, I'm gonna after this conversation's over. There's somebody I want to try and make an introduction for that
Oh,
might
great.
actually benefit both of you in
Okay.
terms of what you're both trying to accomplish. But I think it's cool that that's where you're going to be going next with what you're doing for Q1 of 2021. And for me, as I'm looking at this, I'm starting to see, you know, given your background, where you've come from, the decisions you're making now, I'd be curious to know if there was anybody right now who was listening by chance that you would love to meet by name or trade. Who do you think that would be?
If I could reference that person, it's a good question. But if I could reference someone that at one point I met that's no longer with us, that kind of started it off for me.
Yeah,
Remember that stereo job that I had? It was in San
yeah,
Jose, California, and it was right down the street, literally 2 miles from Apple Computers. And back in the day when Apple Computers was first getting public, one of the customers that came in at night was Steve Jobs.
no way.
And Steve Jobs came in, and I sold him a sound system, and I spent an hour listening to music with him. This is before Apple was iPhone, right? This would not even, I didn't literally even know who he was. And I later on, when I found out, I was able to retrospectively go back and think about, wow, that was like that guy. It was
He was
crazy.
collecting data.
Yeah, yeah. So, I think if he were around today, I'd like, I think what he did really well is he disrupted things with his style. When I met him, he was unusually cool to hang out with, but he was very, very different, very eclectic, very unusual. And when he decided to buy everything, he said, "Okay, I'll take it." And it was to stun me. Um, but that would be that type of influence that I had that gave me the incentive to always look at things from a different way. Like he came in to
Wow.
listen to these speakers that were unusual, and the electronics with Macintosh Electronics, which is not the computer but spelled differently. But nobody wanted that old school stuff, and he wanted the rich quality of the tube amplifiers and things like that. So that would be the answer, but he's not with us today, unfortunately.
I see. Wow, you've had see this is there's not enough time in this one conversation to be able to see all the dots that have driven you to because the interesting thing about you that I can tell why you're an entrepreneur, a real one, is that even though you've accomplished things, you're still focusing on like what are the next two things I could be doing? Is it the music, the music part of the Airtab, or is it the dating potentially? I mean, there's so many things going on right there. You're constantly thinking of the next move, which is it goes to show the level of entrepreneurship you go through your daily life, day to day. So if there was one thing you could leave behind for anybody listening right now who's like is struggling with COVID and they're thinking maybe I should finally try to do the entrepreneur thing or become a freelancer or whatever it's going to be, go out on my own. What would you say to them?
Don't chase the money. Think about the disruption. Find a disruption in something that you really know a lot about. Um, Look for it, and then find the people that have the relevance to help you get the top of the. Used to call it coattails marketing. Find the guy that's already there and get in his coattails. Let him take you to the party, right? Like take you to the event. And we made a partnership with the largest restaurant group, the National Restaurant Association Foundation, They donated $20 million to COVID people, victims, families through restaurants this year already.
Wow.
And they partnered with us, and we made a partnership with Maxim Magazine, made a partnership with Red Bull, and all these things were these partnerships came because we realized that they have to find me relevant so they can get me there quickly. But it wasn't for the money. Like if we disrupt this space, we'll make things easier for everyone and we have a chance to really get back. So that's my counsel would be not chase the money, chase the disruption. Look at what that really looks like. Because everything can be disrupted every time, every day. Circumstances can change something to make it a disruption, like it did for us.
Dennis, man, I I'm picking up what you're putting down, man. I actually
Thanks, man.
I would look forward to staying connected to you. And on that topic, where do you prefer for people to reach out to you to? Like whether it's oh I want to get hired or or whether it is I want to invest in your company or just I just want to follow you and stay up to date with what you're doing.
Well, we try to stay a little low key when we're building this thing because one thing you don't want to do is draw attention to yourself when you're building your platform.
Sure.
What was the founder of LinkedIn said? If you haven't just completely failed it miserably when you first launched and you launched too late, you know, the goal is to launch soon, fail and fail often, so you can figure out what you need to do when you did. So now that we were looking at getting clearly with all the 300 million listeners of iHeart pushing our name out there, we're ready to go. So now that we have that, Instagram would probably be the simplest way to reach out to our company or to me.
Okay.
We're making alliances every day, which is really cool. But that would be the simplest way.
All right,
Probably the most
man.
probably the most relevant, right?
Yeah, yeah. For now, yeah. For now, we'll see what happens with the space and time of social networks. But man, this has been an absolute delight. I honestly feel like there's so much more that we could cover. Um, but it's just the way that the things work for this episode. I'm like hesitant to end it, but honestly, man, it's been a pleasure speaking with you,
Oh,
and
my pleasure as well. Thank you.
I'll be in touch with you after this.
That sounds
So
great.
yeah, thanks for stopping by.
Awesome.